Now this is sort of a follow-up of a question I asked 2 weeks ago, so it'll make no sense, but I couldn't remember Billy Joe Travis's first name. I just remembered something Travis. So I Googled Travis, Dutch Mantell, Travis, basically. And the first video that came up was one from this very YouTube channel, and then the second one under it was a match featuring you versus Paul Orndorff from the NWA, WCW in 1990. And I watched the entire match, and it was just a really just basic, fun, logical match, as you would expect, of course. Memories of wrestling Paul Orndorff. Was that the first time you wrestled him, or did you see him in Georgia or wherever beforehand?
I met him in Florida. Never worked with him. I never worked with him till I got to WCW, and that was just like a match on TV. I never worked any angles with him. Paul always liked me for some reason, and I liked him. So when you get two guys together that like each other, and Paul wasn't like, I'm a big star, you got to do this for me. He wasn't like that. So if I did something to him, he'd sell it. Selling's the whole deal. He has to make me look credible that I posed a threat to him, that I can actually knock him down or slam him or do some things to him. And he was good at that. So, and he was a great, great athlete. I read up on Paul Orndorff. He played football at the University of Tampa. Actually, he was a running back, I think. And he actually got drafted by the NFL. He didn't ever start, but he was a friend of Mike Graham. They went to school together. And Dick Slater was another in that bunch that they went to school together. I think Brian Blair was another one that went to school with Mike. They all ended up in wrestling because they were big wrestling fans growing up. And Eddie, the father, he liked them. So when they expressed a desire to get into wrestling, he helped them. And when he got them in, Brian Blair, he did a lot of good stuff. And, Orndorff went to WWE. And then Mike Graham, of course, he never really left Florida. He worked for WCW later on. And then Brian Blair went to WWF. So they were all highly successful in the years that they were in wrestling. But Paul Orndorff, great guy. And one of the stories that I think that people like to hear, he was a tough son of a bitch. He was tough. One of his legends is he was working at WCW as like an assistant after his wrestling days were kind of over. He was working as an assistant, and he told Van Vader to be there at a certain time to do these interviews. And Van Vader was late. And then Paul said something about it. Van Vader says, "What are you going to do about it?" So Paul beat him up, knocked him down, knocked him out or something. But you imagine, Orndorff, he only weighed he wasn't a little guy, but about 230, but Vader was over 400. And they said he beat the shit out of him and knocked him out. And that was the end of that. But there's a lot of stories about Orndorff around the Tampa area, like of him beating people up. Him and Slater both. They were two rough young men. So
Brian Blair, who I think was best friends with, or one of his best friends for many years, said that once, I don't know if it was on a bet or whatever it was, that he had relations with 7 ladies in one night during a wrestling show. In an intermission or something like that. It's like, how do you even organise that, Paul Orndorff?
Paul Orndorff?
Yeah. I don't even know how you'd organise that. I mean, that seems like a lot of planning.
I don't know. I don't know how you would organise that, to tell you the truth.
When you...
how the question to me is, how could you be physically able? I mean, I don't know.
I'm asleep after the first time anyway. With Orndorff's deteriorating arm this time, because he had the neck injury, the neck impingement, it killed the muscles in his arm, nerves in his arm. Did you have to be specifically careful with Paul as far as not going too near his neck, or did anything else ache? Where specific things?
I think he never said a word about it when I worked with him. I don't think it was bothering him that bad. And I never noticed it, to tell you the truth. I didn't even know the story the last couple of years when he passed away. And I heard all the stories about his arm. But I think his arm was deteriorating. He had lost movement in it in the later years. But as a guy, I really like Paul Orndorff.
Do you remember Paul Orndorff's very brief run in Smoky Mountain Wrestling? Were you there at that time?
I was there. But I think those guys at the time, it was like Arn Anderson coming in. They wouldn't come in full time. They would come in for like a 6-week run. And Arn would come in for a 6-week or 2-month run because he wasn't doing anything in Charlotte. So they were just filling in open dates. So that's how they would come in there.